Most people think being an empath is just about feeling others' emotions. But Carl Jung saw something deeper. He believed that highly sensitive people are often caught in the tension between their conscious mind and the collective unconscious. Jung explained that empaths don't just sense feelings, they pick up on archetypes, hidden patterns of the human psyche that live in all of us. That's why empaths sometimes feel overwhelmed. They're not only dealing with one person's emotions, but also the weight of the collective. Jung warned, if you don't set boundaries, you'll drown in what isn't even yours. But if you learn to integrate this sensitivity, it becomes a gift, a direct doorway into understanding the hidden forces shaping people and the world around you. Most
Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Webster Report on this Sunday, the 14th of December. Again, this year, we look at it, it's nearly over with. Depending on which calendar we're looking at, we don't quite know what years we are. We've got a lot of speculation about our history, got a lot of speculation about things that are going on in each individual country, and looking to see what else brings with this stuff. As usual, I have my trusty associate, Mr. Brocklehurst, and we also have our US correspondent, Uni Black Sister Taylor. There's going to be some questions tonight because we've seen some big movements, and as Taylor indicated, that this Q thing is possibly a worldwide thing. So we now want to start looking at these incidents that are happening and seeing if this is part of the plan or a plan, or is it something a little bit bigger? So we've got condolences to speak about with what's happened down on Bondi Beach in Australia. I believe it's now 16 that have been killed there today. But again, I've seen some of the footage, and there is some questionable stuff, at least in this footage. But we're going to see what happens as it breaks down over the week, because that's usually when we start seeing things. We saw it quite early doors with the Charlie Kirk stuff. So, Alex, do you want to weigh in on the first gambit, the opening of the show, and what you think about these shootings? I know you're not picked up too much on it, but again, it's now being classed as a terrorist attack, and it appears to be people of Middle Eastern appearance shooting at Jews again.
Yeah, well, I mean, the first thing I'll say is just a general statement of context, which is, sometimes you get a dripping tap and it drips rhythmically, right? And a running tap's running all the time. And if you look at media's running all the time. So it's like a background noise. All mainstream media is just like white noise. There's very little useful information in it. But when you get a tap dripping, it tends to drip rhythmically until it stops altogether. Like plink, 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 like this. And what I find interesting about these so-called events that happen, because obviously we talk about false flags and so on and so forth, and no one ever really knows. So there's immediate suspicion because of the mainstream media. But what I've noticed is there's a sort of a rhythmic plink, plink, plink of the tap. It's like, oh yeah, it always looks a bit like, oh, we'll just throw in another atrocity here that could be connected to something that could be linked with terror. And what are the themes and topics of the day? All right, it fits in with the themes and topics of the day. You might almost think that we're being fed a steady stream of these things with fairly predictable intervals, and then everything settles down again, and there's another one, and then something else, and then there's another one. So to me, I don't know, you would think it would be happening all over the world, pretty much, in several, but it always just seems to be one place in the world and one thing that gets reported with a certain frequency or regularity, and I just think that makes it very suspect. It almost seems to support a notion of a narrative by continual dripping of a tap by reinforcement. So that would be my opening gambit. That automatically there's something about the whole agenda that we hear of that just drips things in with this consistency, and I'm just naturally suspicious of that, but not paranoid. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I am a person who looks at the facts and says something conspicuous about how the media is handling this. So, yeah, what to believe. And if, as you've said, I've not seen the footage, but you've already spotted something in the footage. I'm sure it's one of those to be continued. More is going to come out. Lots of different eyes will be on it. Any anomalies will be picked up on. I mean, I'm amazed after the moon landings. Like, you often say, and there we are. Someone rings on a landline to the moon, but nobody asks any questions. So even when it's there in plain sight, nobody asks any questions. And we've got to always ask the question, what on earth is that about? That people are so dumb. And we've got this so-called flu epidemic thing, and it's like, I think I saw something earlier with Katie Hopkins has done this fantastic send-up. She's not always my favourite person, but she's done a brilliant send-up. I was sent this link. I think it was by Adele, actually. And it was really, really cool, really funny. So obviously they're going to ramp up on masks and the fear porn. So, it's same old here.
Yeah, it's when something like this happens, especially on a scale like this, I think it should be automatic that you think what is being buried while this is going on. So I'm not too sure of what I'm trying to look to see if there's anything that is going on. We've still got the digital ID that is being protested, and you know what I feel like about the term protest. We've got to start rejecting these things instead of legally protesting them. But I know that there's a lot of people protesting the digital IDs, and I'm not sure on whether they're going to get this through. I mean, it is even coming out towards mainstream. I've got a clip here that I picked up from the other day.
I'll tell you what's a dictatorship, and I'll tell you what's an authoritarian regime. It's cancelling elections. It's cancelling jury trials. It's imposing a digital ID system with no political mandates. And it's also curbing online dissent that you don't approve of. That's how authoritarian regimes operate. And you're doing all of that without a political mandate. It was not in your manifesto. We're not the ones cancelling elections. We're not the ones that want to surveil the whole country. We're not the ones that want to subject everyone to a digital ID without a political mandate. That's how dictators operate. It's not us, it's you.
No, you can't take you can't say there's no truth in any of that. That's all absolutely true. That's all absolutely going on. That fella had nothing to come back on, because if we go digital and we have no jury trials, then the last of our rights are going to go. That's why even though when we look at martial law, even though we can look at it and we can even justify it and we can see the positives about getting that country back, it's when that is given up, and bearing in mind the majority of people don't realise that we're under martial law, or under to what extent, because they only ever associate martial law with being stopped on the street corner and asking for your papers, or being out, and you can't be out past such a time. We've been tiptoed up to this point. That somehow, though, I don't see that they're tiptoeing anymore. No. Taylor, I don't know if you've caught wind of that shooting or anything today. Have you got any opinion on whether it's?
I do actually. I think it's a complete joke, and I was laughing as soon as I saw the on the immediate aftermath because of what was exposed. Oh man, it was just a joke, and if you want, I can explain why that is.
Well, I think that would be a good idea, because people often say when we all make these comments that well, I don't know about it. So yeah, tell us why you think that.
Okay, well, first of all, I'm going to share my screen real quick because I feel like that this is important for me to be able to show pictures as well as being able to while I'm explaining. So there we go. All right, so let's go ahead and get into a couple of these things. Okay, number one. So this is the first thing. Over 24 hours. A Muslim killed 3 Americans in Syria. 5 Muslims arrested for plotting a massacre at a Christmas market in Germany. Paris concert canceled due to Muslim violence. 2 Muslims murdered 12 people at a Hanukkah party in Australia. And this is a good comment right here. I couldn't have said any better myself. Sure seems like this Muslim extremism is going worldwide. Sounds like a repeat necessary scenario. And as Q said, repeats necessary in order to instill in the public exactly what they need to know. Oh boy. Next one. And this one's good. This is hilarious, bro. Look at this. Look at this nonsense. The same guy survived 10-7 and Bondi Beach. That's wild. Same as that girl from Brown yesterday who also survived Parkland. Crazy times. Oh my God. It's the same people. It's just like the Sandy Hook nonsense. Okay, here's another one.
It's the anniversary of that today.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you for pointing that out. I was going to do that, actually. Thank you. And look what country was Googling Bondi Beach in Australia yesterday on the 13th. Oh, fuck. I didn't mean to click that. Israel, Tel Aviv. All right. And the same thing happened before the DC shooting. Exactly. Oh, man. Let's see here. Let's see here, right here. A cluster. Okay. Look at the camera. Look at this. Gotta stage this all looks. And then look at that. The police, of course, they have to have the driver's license, or is it the passport, whatever it is, right there. Yeah, the driver's license right there. Right in plain sight for everyone to see. You know what that reminds me of?
Yeah, I do. You're right. We do see, before
we continue, just mention for everyone what exactly this is a good reminder of. Yeah, just can you just mention it for the audience?
What?
9/11.
Yes, the famous passport that was on the 2 passports, the one that survived the fire at the World Trade Center and the one that was in Shanksville. Yep. Convenient. Oh my God, this is hilarious. Oh man, and then this one again. Yep. Let's see here. From the Boston office, Rhode Island, related to. Yeah, pretty much. Where there was this one. There was this one post I wanted to bring up too, but I can't seem to find it now. Okay, I'll just read this post for everyone to be able to see. There are no organic terrorism attacks. I'll say it again. There are no organic terrorist attacks, ever. If they tell you a terrorist attack of any kind stems purely from an ideology, it's a fake. It's a lie. Such a lie will always and only be based on whatever ideology is most hostile to global slavery and global tyranny at a specific time in history. To sell their lies, they will give you fake passports, planted manifestos, fake suicide notes, fake diagrams, doctored recordings, fake text exchanges using phrases like drop point and police cruiser, fake government inquiries, fake government investigation, reports/findings, fake emails generated through Photoshop/other pixelation engines, fake university records, fake immigration records, fake employment records, fake hospital records, fake employee/personnel rosters, doctored video footage, and fake bait and switch arrests. And pretty much just saying that this comes from the intelligence agencies, as we know. Oh boy! And then of course we have Mr. Fake Netanyahu talking about this as to be expected. Where is that one post that I wanted to say? Here it is. This was posted on X. Breaking. There are now 2 students who survived the shooting at Brown University in Rhode Island tonight that are also supposedly survived 2 other well-known mass shootings. Zoe Weissman, a Parkland survivor, and now Mia Treda, a hardcore gun control and anti-Second Amendment activist who has met with disgraced former President Biden and just happened to be there tonight. Both have already been making the rounds on CNN and MSDNC, pushing the gun control agenda in the immediate aftermath of surviving yet another mass shooting. Does anyone actually believe that this is a coincidence? We are talking about two completely different parts of the country, two alleged repeated survivors of mass shootings, years apart from one another. Call me a conspiracy theorist, guys, but something just isn't right about this. And yeah, and like you said, this is also on the anniversary of the Sandy Hook hoax. So yeah, yeah.
Well,
You-
like I
Okay,
was.
Go ahead.
Go on, Alex.
I was just going to say, so Taylor, we're already getting some comments in the chat, and I want you to take these comments seriously, not just dismiss them.
No,
So,
I will.
Megasaurus said, a dripping tap, which is the language I used, like the Q narrative constantly pushed on this show, 8 years of hopium nonsense, right? And then Bimsy's come on and said, is he trying to make out because it's Jews, it's a made-up event, or to BS? Then he calls you an anti-Semite D-head. So obviously, right, there's two
Yeah, I
different
don't
things.
respond to comments like that.
Just 1 second. Just let me clarify. There's two aspects to this. As Paul's already said, and I would concur, we can see that many a time, we saw in this country Lee Rigby so-called being decapitated, but when people slowed it down into a freeze frame, it was a fit-up job, and then there were different photographs of different Lee Rigbys. So the bottom line then with that is that we can tell there's something about that picture does not add up. And that's what you're saying. Something about the official picture doesn't add up. So you've just presented the evidence. Now, the others talking about the anti-Semitic thing, they've picked up in you from the past that, because, for example, when you read from that thing and you talk about the shitty little state, they know you have no sympathies with, say, the Jewish states. Now, that doesn't mean it's anti-Semitic, but people can read it in that way. So there's two different things going on. And it's a good example, this, because it can leave your flanks exposed. If you appear to be even slightly anti-Jewish, people can discredit the other part of what you're saying, which for sure me and Paul would agree with, and many others would agree with, that something about these images doesn't add up, same with Charlie Kirk. And if we always get Israel, not just by you, but by others, dragged into it, and that false flags and all this are just to do with Jewish news. Well, no, we saw it with Lee Rigby in this country, which was, it was to do with Islamism and, the whole idea of chopping off heads and so on and so forth. So I think we need to separate the issues off. And I think I'd like to give you an opportunity now just to clarify your position on what you think about Jews and the state of Israel over against, say Muslims or other ethnicities or whatever. Is there something particularly about Jews? Apart from, we know about Kalergi, and we know, there's a small bunch of Jewish elites, but there's a small bunch of Arab, Saudi elites. There's a small bunch of British elites. There's a small bunch of American elites. I'm sure there's a small bunch of Czech or Polish elites, right? So try and clarify a little bit for the audience so that we can stifle some of these criticisms that people are making that's saying that you're anti-Jewish.
Okay, well, before I do that, first off, let me just say that I will not respond to ad hominem emotional statements, because I'm not going to waste my time with nonsense like that. But I will but to answer your question specifically,
Yeah.
So obviously there are fundamentally, at the end of the day, if you know about the New World Order, if you know about the deep state, if you have done any kind of investigation into this, you know that at the very top of the pyramid is these fake Jews, Khazarian elites, the Khazarian elite mafia. They're the ones at the top, the Rothschilds and the Warburgs, the Schiffs, all these people. They're at the very top. At one time during the 19th century, they were working alongside the British elites in order to control the world. But after World War II, they subverted the British elite as well and took them down, because at the end of the day, they're the ones who held the money and the power. And so at the end of the day, when I talk about Jews, I'm not. I can't believe I have to say this. I'm not talking about all Jews, obviously. I'm talking about the clique at the top. But if you're gonna come at me and talk about being an anti-Semite, I'm just gonna laugh at you and just say, kiss my ass. because I don't. I'm not going to waste my time with ad hominem attacks. Simple as that. You want to believe I'm an anti-Semite? Go ahead. I don't give a
Right.
damn.
Well, you just made a distinction. Yeah, I get where you're coming from. But obviously, because there's an overlap, like I was saying last week, we've still got, as presenters on the show, an obligation to clarify our position. Even if a person says or misunderstands 1,000 times, it might get a bit irritating. But it doesn't harm your case to restate the position that you believe there's a set of people masquerading as authentic Jews who are not authentic Jews, because that immediately answers the criticism. Like, anyone could masquerade as authentic anything and pretend to be something else to frame somebody. But even that would be interesting, because in whose interest would it be to frame real Jews? So that's an interesting one, I think. So clarifying your position, Taylor, although it might be annoying to you because you deal with a lot of flack, you've always still got to remember that even when people come across and it does seem a bit ad hominem, that's just what people do on chat shows, mate. You've got to rise above it.
Well, yeah, that's why I typically don't respond to it or just laugh at it. Because at the end of the day, you're going to get that, and there's no point in wasting your energy on that nonsense. At the end of the day, it's just like the people who come at you and call you a racist or a conspiracy theorist or whatever. It's like, I don't give a damn about your labels. I deal in facts. I don't deal in emotions or labels. So at the end of the day, yeah, I just tell these people to kiss my ass.
Okay, well, that's a slightly different approach. But go on, Paul. Sorry.
We have to have a bit of a debate on facts, though, then, don't we? Because
of course,
when there's new information, we've got to include that information. And a lot of the time, that new information can get drove over roughshod and nobody see it. And it's the same when you're being attacked over ad hominem attacks like that. There's new viewers coming in and they just see allegations laid at you. And I don't expect you to go into full detail or anything. I expect you to laugh and bat that one off, but then bolster your position. So you smack it out the park, but then you bolster your position. So you're not taking the flack, you're not getting dragged into it, you're laughing at it, but then you bolster your position. Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly.
That's all. I think that's all that Alex was getting at. That it does get a bit monotonous, but I'm still fielding things about that the gas, water, and electric. You should just pay for your bills and stop expecting other people to pay for it. Now that's either somebody who's there to actually just make stupid statements like that, or it's somebody who's actually not in touch with reality whatsoever, and they're just living off that opinion. This is where, when new information comes in, everybody's got opinions, and everybody's entitled to those opinions. But if there's new information that could change your opinion, and you refuse to look at that information, then we've got a problem. And I think that's what we've got a lot of that on top of the actual cognitive dissonance that's being created through this. I mean, we've got the cognitive dissonance going on over here again now, Taylor. We've got a super flu. It's got nothing to do with the vaccine-damaged immune systems that are in people, and they're catching the ordinary cold, and it's now a super flu because their immune system is so shot to pieces. We can't think about things like that because it's just a coincidence, all these things. They're calling for masks, useless masks, to be worn again. Today, I went into town and I seen 3 people, 2 on a market stall where they were selling stuff, and they're all starting to put these masks on again, all telling you to go and get your new jabs because these ones will really work. Are we all going to fall for this again? That's what I'm saying about this distraction. Are we looking over to Australia and all our hearts will go out to those? Again, as soon as, whether it's done on purpose or not, there's going to be questions raised about this incident. There's going to be theories about it, just like the Charlie Kirk. And what it'll do is it'll just get everybody arguing and no information will swap hands. And that's what is quite fearful about this stuff. So even, again, just going back to your position, Taylor, I agree that it's so monotonous, but you've got to be able to back that off and then bolster your position. So you've got it both ways. And I think it only comes with time. I mean, I've said to Alex how far you've come along, because 5 years ago when you was coming on Raconteurs News, everybody could just bait you in the chat room and you were just dragged off. And you're so much better now because you're more calculated, and it shows. It shows.
I'll have to go back and look at those old shows. It's been a while, to be honest. Usually,
Yeah.
when I hear my own voice in a video, I kind of get cringed. So,
But the thing is, there was a lot of times after those shows that me and Jason, sometimes just Jason and sometimes just me, we spent 2 or 3 hours after the show chatting with you, and it was Jason, how he was telling you, because he'd done a lot of presenting, and he was the one who was saying you've got to put these pauses in and put more spaces, because you was just like opening up with an AK-47 and an Uzi at the same time, and people were just getting peppered with information, but there was no understanding. So I think when you slow it all down and you break it down like we've just asked you to, people even in the chat room said they agree that these incidents could be psyops, could be made up. Does it mean that people haven't died in there? No, of course it doesn't mean that. But we've got to take it for what it is and see what floats and what doesn't here. And we've got to be honest with what evidence we're presented with and not listen to a narrative that's going to tug at heartstrings. Because I think, especially with the Sandy Hook thing that you touched on, Taylor, there's so much question about that incident. There's not just one or two. There's so many questions. And I was going to have Wolfgang Halbig on the show years ago to talk about it, but he got silenced just around the same time as Alex Jones was. That was happening. Now, was all that done on purpose? Is it all real? Is it just for show? These are the things that we've got to hold in front of us, because we just don't know, but we certainly can't discard them. So we've got stuff going on. Like I said, these hospitals are now filling up. 295 admitted into one hospital, and they've all got flu. So there's a common denominator. But they're urging people to go and get these new jabs still, yet we're getting studies and information coming back to us all the time. And this is new information. So what do people do with it? Do they just ignore it and carry on?
Yeah, so we recently, actually yesterday, published a study in the World Journal of Cardiology. It's titled Risk Stratification for Future Cardiac Arrest After COVID-19 Vaccination. And what we did in this study was, it's the first study to fully elucidate the syndrome known as COVID-19 vaccine-induced cardiac arrest. And how this happens is you get injected with mRNA injections. The mRNA travels within lipid nanoparticles to all organ systems, including the heart. And once it's in there, your cardiomyocytes start to produce a spike protein. And also this spike protein is found circulating in the bloodstream, which can also reach the heart. There's now over 320 peer-reviewed studies showing that the spike protein alone is highly pathogenic. And so it gets in the heart. And then some people have symptoms, some people don't. They get myocarditis. This is seen 600% increased risks of myocarditis after mRNA injections, based on the largest COVID-19 vaccine safety study ever conducted with 99 million people in it. So they get myocarditis, have symptoms or no symptoms, and we found that the trigger for this cardiac arrest is usually in the waking morning hours of sleep, 3 a.m. to 6 a.m., or during sports or exercise when there's a surge in catecholamines, including dopamine, norepinephrine, and epinephrine.
So we're finding out that is what's going on after all the other jabs. Now they want to go and get these new ones. Are people just going to fall in for this, Alex? Because we've seen it happen before. They've not changed tack. They're doing the same thing. I look at the comments on these posts and you'd think everybody's against it, but are they going to have enough to push this through?
Well, the thing is, if you think about literature in general and compare it to poetry, you got a simple poem, "The cat sat on the mat," or a Shakespearean sonnet, which is really elaborate, many stanzas in it. So compare that then to a narrative, to a story, a very simple story or a very complex and elaborate story. The world we're living in now is so much complexity, so much going on. People are looking for certainty. It's a bit like being on a raft on the open seas when there's a massive gale going on and people lack stability and they're in fear and they wonder what's happening next. They want simple narratives. And as a result, we're already being primed for simple black or white answers to complex problems, because that enables us, well, it doesn't really, but we think it does, to resolve the cognitive dissonance that would normally keep our nervous system provoked, so we can't settle. So everyone wants to, but it's like the mother's breast for the infant. And it's suckling and it feels better and it's getting food and it stops crying. So in a way, our nervous system's collectively deranged. And when we get a nice simple story with a ribbon on top, we can go. And that was that position that Megasaurus was explaining about hopium, as in opium, anesthetic through hope. So this is the critique that was being made of Q, because it's an exclusively positive message. You and me, for example, believe, yes, it may look that way. It's selling it as a very positive, yes, everything's under control. Don't worry about it. Commander-in-chief's in charge, the military. Now, whether that's right or wrong doesn't matter. It fits into the category of a soothing narrative. We should be suspicious of all soothing narratives because that's the MO. Soothing narratives are designed to make people feel better. And that's separate than them actually feeling better because of the facts. If we equate the two, we have a problem, because we're amenable to ideological distortion, believing in potentially fake hope. And one person goes, well, no, it's not fake hope because these are the facts. And everyone else goes, yeah, but I don't believe they're the facts. So we still come back to the level of narrative. And the simpler the narrative is. So again, I like traveling abroad. The story is, if I take this vaccine, I can still travel abroad. That's a nice, simple story. What's the answer? Take your vaccine, you can still go abroad. What happens if you can't go abroad? Well, I can't go abroad. What can I do? My whole life's built on the 9 to 5 and living for the weekends. I can't even go away. I can't put up with that. Yeah, but somebody said there's going to put a load of toxins in you, but it's going to shorten your life and you won't be going on holiday ever again when you're dead. No, I've got to be able to go on holiday. You're knocking on the door going, hello, can you hear me? If you physically die, you won't be going on holiday anyway. Oh, get away, I'm not interested in that. I want to be able to go on holiday. And you're going, hello, is there anybody in there? You'll be physically dead. Oh, you're a conspiracy theorist, aren't you? So the problem is these simple narratives, it's like the whole thing with COVID. And bacteria are very primitive. So people are frightened of bugs, little things that can get into your system that you can't see. It's a time-honoured approach. Scare people with infection fear because it's primitive and basic, and tell stories about that and then give simple solutions. Take your vaccine and it's all okay. Wear your mask and it'll reduce the risk. These people who are driven by fear, that simple solution to a simple fake narrative, it makes them feel better. That's why they do it. You are talking about level of psychological operation that basically exploits that fact about humans seeking simple narratives. And it doesn't matter which way you cut the cake, hopium or fear porn, doesn't matter. They're both simplistic reductionist narratives. It's very rarely the case that everything is all bad. That's catastrophizing, and it's linked with anxiety. And it's very rare that everything's all positive, because that's naivety, gullibility, and undue optimism. The truth is always somewhere in the middle.
How much of it would be psychosomatic? Because we've all known people. I certainly have known people who, one guy had been struggling with a tickly cough for 3 months. and he eventually went to the doctors, diagnosed with cancer, and then within 3 weeks he died. And he'd been going for months with it because all of a sudden he knew what it was, and it was like part of him accepted that, and it took over. So we've seen this psychosomatic reaction a lot of the time. So if you're putting people into this fight or flight mode of life all the time, constantly, from every time they wake up to when they go to sleep, and then they're not sleeping properly because of all that, you are just wearing people down, and you wear immune systems down that are natural. Then you jab things into the human body that just shouldn't be there. And it's like the immune system in the control room, they must just be going, what's going on? This is just, what are you doing? What are you injecting this stuff in for? Let's have this injection. It's got monkey cells in it. What are we doing that for? Why are we putting monkey cells in? Well, we want to agitate the immune system so it'll come and attack. Well, it's going to attack monkey cells, isn't it? It's going to do things like that. Why are we having these things? Why is the SV40 in the ingredients an ingredient that they inject into lab rats to cause cancer so they can pretend to see how they can cure it? Why are they putting that into syringes that are going into humans? People don't care. I met with my mate today, and he was saying it's true. Nobody cares. It doesn't matter what is going on. You can tell people, nobody cares. It's not happening to them yet. And this is the danger. Martin Niemöller leaps into the picture yet again. It's not happening to me yet, so I'm not going to say anything or do anything. And people then say to me, go, well, why don't you do something? When you've been there 11, 15 years ago, all that time we had time, we had things that we could have done, but nobody cared. They wanted to do their own thing. But we had a remedy, and I'm all for using the remedies first. Let's talk about the theories later and the arguments. Let's use a remedy, and that remedy would have been, they were giving those remedies out like confetti back then, Alex, and it's only now you can't get them that, people say, oh, see, you were wrong, or this, that, and the other. No, you've just got to fight that little bit harder.
Well, what about this then, pal? Like you said, it hasn't happened to me yet. I'd argue, in a lot of cases, it has happened to me yet, but I haven't noticed yet. So, a lot of the stuff that's happening, if you look at McDonald's food, we call it food in the food chain, but it's not. But loads of people have it gleefully. They order it, takeaway, delivery, whatever it is, and it's not food. So that's low-level slow death by eating stuff that's not food. And that's been a curse, really, since the Industrial Revolution, and it's like the whole mass production of stuff. I mean, even with corn, which is basically, it's not even, they try and claim it's mycoprotein as if it's fungal, but it's not a fungus. It's not, is it? It's not a fungus. It's a mold. It's a mold, and they're not good for you. So eating them, probably not a good idea. So all this artificial stuff, and now they're talking about artificial meat. So basically, the stuff that's been appearing in the last 150 years, manufactured by us, is creating these unintended byproducts. So we've got that slow death that's affecting us. So we say, oh, it's not affecting me yet. Yeah, on the big events, but they're not the ones that are always as worrying as, the small ones. Do you remember that time when they found horse meat in corned beef? And it's like, right, why did they tell us that? Well, when is the human meat then in the food chain and they're not telling us? When are we being defiled? Because we largely have to operate on trust. That we trust food producers and food standards, but when we are getting people to compete in a market economy and getting them to cut corners to make more profit, and they go, well, just put some toenails in and grind them down and use it as a bulking agent. They're not going to know. Nothing wrong with toenails. whatever it is that they justify doing. We don't know the crap we're eating, the more processed it is. And if you don't have control over your own food and you're not growing your own stuff, you're at the mercy of other people. And at one time we could trust, because big processors were fairly regulated. Now, people giving other people backhanders, and we just don't know what's in food. We like to believe, same with water. Look at water supply. Not too long ago, they were saying British water, English water, British water, are the purest in the world. I know people with filters that have got that much gunk in them. It's unsafe with parts per million of stuff. They shouldn't be in there twice the recommended level. But the narrative prevails again. So we're getting slow death, cumulative, whether it's through vaccines, antibiotics given to cows because they're constantly gotten pregnant to produce milk. So there's derangement everywhere. People eat McDonald's food, fast food lifestyle, high levels of stress. So yeah, big issues. I don't know about it. It's not happened to me. Small issues everywhere, grinding everyone down.
Definitely. So Taylor, you brought that down. What do you see with what's happening with the Middle East now? Because we've got a little bit of. I certainly brought it up with Alex before the show that there's a bit of confusion going on. You've had now. You might say it's another psyop. It's not happened, but you've got a terrorist attack on 2 US are they civilians, or there's a civilian with them, and they've been attacked in Syria by what Trump said is ISIS. But the government of Syria is ISIS. So what's happening there? Have you any opinion on that?
Well, I mean, it's it's just like you said, just another it's another psyop. Everything, you have to look at everything as a psyop. I tell people, if you don't know Q, then you don't have a clue. That's what I say to people, because at the end of the day, if you don't understand Q, then you're going to look at every single event as an organic event, and you're not going to see the bigger picture that's coming from it.
Taylor, that's not true, is it?
I mean, it pretty much is, because if you don't.
No, it ain't, mate. It ain't. So I don't have to believe in Q, whether I do or I don't. Secondary, I can read between the lines using Noam Chomsky, and I don't like him now, Noam Chomsky and Edward Herman's propaganda model, phenomenological method. I can read between the lines and see stories that don't add up as a critic. And I can be a critic of Q or not a critic of Q. So critical faculties are independent of anybody, and by I mean any body of knowledge, not anybody, who might make any claims, whether they're true or not, because it's my critical intelligence and ability to spot pattern, which you mentioned yourself. So it can't just be this simple binary of, well, if you don't believe in Q, you're a dumb retard that doesn't understand anything.
Well, I never said it. Well, okay, well, I didn't put it like that.
By implication, that a lot of people will draw that conclusion. So I'm not saying you said that. I don't want to misrepresent you. But it can seem as if you confidently assert that those people that don't understand Q, basically they don't understand it and they're going to be suckered by the optics. It's just not true. So all I'm saying here, mate, is I think you'd benefit from being a bit more precise with your language, because that way you're not going to have an Achilles heel. You're not going to be as criticisable. The idea of presenting, I think, because we should all want to grow and get better at what we do, right? And that seems to be something that you're doing. I think you need to perhaps just benefit, or you benefit from looking at that, because you'll strengthen your own case if you don't make those kind of quite black or white arguments, because what you stated is actually false.
And where I was coming from was, what I'm trying to get at, have these people been killed? And if they have been, and it's part of, because as we said, it's plausible, Taylor, that is a psyop that we're just being told about, and we shouldn't accept these as individual random terrorism. What I'm trying to draw the link is that we're being told it's ISIS, and yet ISIS are the ones that were funded and trained and armed to overthrow the Assad regime. So in Syria, being run by ISIS, Trump is now saying there's been an ISIS attack. Yet there wasn't any ISIS. Trump had got rid of them. So that's what I'm saying. How does this, for somebody who doesn't know Q, how could we even draw people in to understand something like that? Would you be able to break that down?
Well, first of all, let me just put it like this: that if you don't understand Q, first thing is there's nothing wrong with that. I don't attack people for that. All I say though is go do your research and go do your studying. At the end of the day, I have plenty of stuff that you can look at in order to become not necessarily an expert. You don't have to be an expert or anything, but just get the basic understanding, because at the end of the day, we're under a worldwide military operation right now, and everything has to be viewed in that context, because because otherwise you're just going to be you're going to be misunderstanding what the point of these events really are supposed to be, which at the end of the day, all of this is for public awakening in one way or another, whether it be the vaccine agenda or the Muslim immigration agenda or the terrorist ISIS agenda. It all comes down to that. People need to be shown these things, because as you just said, you can't tell people. I mean, you can tell people all you want that, oh, the vaccine is dangerous. If you take it, you'll be getting permanent damage to your system for the rest of your life. But if people are shown that, then they'll understand for themselves, and that's pretty much the only way that it can be really done. So, to answer your question directly, as far as this ISIS event is, well, you have to look at. I come back to the thing I mentioned before. ISIS was a Mossad creation, funded by Mossad and the CIA. Trump dismantled their funding in 2017 and 2018 with his executive order. So they had their funding revoked. Meanwhile, Putin was there. Putin and Xi were there, and Iran were there bombing them on the ground. And they've been on a commission for a long time. And just like when this so-called topple of Assad happened last year, this, I say it's like if ISIS has been out of business for years and we haven't heard of them for so long, how is it that all of a sudden they can just come out of nowhere and then just topple Syria out of nowhere, seemingly? That's what the optics say. Doesn't make any sense. So then you have to ask yourself.
I was going to say that's the point, though, isn't it? Because we're talking about psyops. BBC was telling us in 2014 that Syria was undergoing a civil war, yet reporters who I was speaking to, who are boots on the ground there, were saying, no, this is insurgency. It's ISIS funded terrorists and armed by the West, who are in the no man's land area of the Golan Heights and Syria, and were trying to get in there to overturn that regime. Now, if that is all part of Q, then we're looking at an incident that's involved Jews on a beach in Australia, where we're getting told this is another Muslim attack. As you rightly pointed out, all these other Muslim attacks that have been going on, they're all being pointed at to cause division, and it's doing a really good job of it. It's pitting people against people who have no real beef with each other, but the narrative is telling us, because it's coming from fundamentalists. So how does this fit in with, again, what's gone on with this ISIS thing? That, again, yeah, you're right, they were gone, but they weren't, because they've obviously still been there. The fella who's the so-called lead in Syria is an ex-ISIS commander. So they've not gone anywhere. This is where we've got to start thinking about what is happening in that Middle East. And I've got a couple of videos here. I want to play them, and then I'll get both your opinions on them, because there's a slant on it for a lot of scriptural evidence here, but being part of this plan, Taylor, and it's worldwide, like you said, and it's to expose these things. We want to see what we're pointing at. Okay, all that's being exposed. What is the middle? Is it a donut? Have we got a big missing piece, or have we got something? So I'll play these couple of clips, and then I'll get your
The
opinions.
Board of Peace is a board like no other. It will have the heads of major countries. I hope Your Highness will be on the board. You'll accept, I hope. But the Board of Peace will be something that's never even been thought of before. And it's covering Gaza, but it'll end up covering large portions of the world. There will never be a board like the board that we're going to be announcing. What's taking place in the Middle East is a miracle. They're just calling it a miracle. And we're going to make it a miracle, and we're very close to doing that.
Trump is unveiling something around December 15th called the Board of Peace. It's said to have 10 to 12 global leaders on the board. If you know Bible prophecy, this should shake you. If it ends up being 10 members on the board, I believe Daniel called this 2,500 years ago. Daniel saw a final world system rising with 10 horns, 10 leaders, 10 rulers, all united under one global authority. Revelation 17 says those 10 kings are given authority for 1 hour, and then they give their power to the beast. 10 leaders, one agenda. If it ends up being 12 members, well, that number is not random either. In the Bible, the number 12 represented God's government. 12 tribes, 12 disciples, 12 foundations of the New Jerusalem. And the thing about it is Satan doesn't create, he counterfeits. A global technocratic 12 pretending to bring peace, while Revelation 6 describes a false peace that will fool the world. The world wants peace without the Prince of Peace, and the Bible says that's exactly how the end starts. Watch the numbers, watch the structures, watch the Bible unfold. God's clock is ticking.
Oh boy, this might be a little alarming, guys. So, there are the 10 kings from Daniel who will have power over the earth, and this will be a whole beast system and things like that. Oh my gosh. Donald Trump is going to announce the phase 2 of the Gaza peace bill, and he's putting together a board of peace that will happen before Christmas or by Christmas of this year, where there will be approximately 10 heads of this board. Why the number 10? Why the number 10? Is it directly correlated to the book of Daniel? And we're talking about peace here. Oh my gosh, where are we headed, guys? If this is real, if this is true, then we know exactly where we stand, and we know that who could be the T. This is blowing my mind, because why is everything so symbolic? Like, or are they just playing in our faces? Has he read the Bible? Is he trying to mimic? I don't get it, because it's just playing right into the hands of the end times. What do you mean you're appointing approximately 10 people on the board for the Board of Peace for the Middle East? Yikes. Oh my boy. Where are we going?
So who wants to pitch in first on that one?
Right, well, I will, because it's always interesting, this stuff. But you've got decoys as well, and false trails. Because the thing about patterns is generally you've got a certain set of data points. Let's just say at 100 data points. If you've got 100 data points, right, you can interpolate, which means you can add points within those points. So if you imagine joining every point on a graph and there are 100 points, it might make the shape of not just a simple line, which is unlikely with 100 points, or a curve, but it might be like an S-shaped curve, or it might be an undulating curve. And you could try and develop an equation to predict certain things. You could interpolate points in between those points to try and read between the lines. But you can extrapolate beyond the data points you currently get to try and suggest the trajectory or the direction. So it's interesting when you start getting into the statistical aspect of that. Helps you to be, having a better picture. But once people have a certain number of points, they know the projected points at which something's supposed to happen that's aligned with that equation, that will be consistent with it. So once people become aware of the pattern, they can begin to shape the pattern. They can begin to manufacture false flags. You can do it with astrology to a degree. You can look at significant events and significant aspects, and you've got all these astrological interpretations of what that might mean based on the planetary glyphs and symbols in a particular configuration. Then somebody who's using this stuff can begin to manufacture stuff in line with what the pattern would predict. And those people who don't understand all of that will look at the thing that happens and say, well, that's an expression of the astrology, so that's going to happen. So it's the same with 10 or 12 and the biblical significance and using the word peace. So yes, of course, it could be the fact that, wow, that's uncanny, we've spotted this thing, and those who are awake can see it relates to this. And there might be others who say, yeah, so they realise that this is the way to lead people into the next sheep pen, thinking that they've escaped from one, we'll just move them into the other. So it's very, very difficult based on any event in its own right, because any event is a new data point. But that data point cannot be self-confirming. It has to be fitted into a pre-existing pattern to see how it fits the pattern or doesn't fit the pattern. Now, if it doesn't fit the pattern, you have an anomaly and you discount it anyway. If it does fit the pattern, it doesn't mean it proves the pattern, because somebody could have shaped the event to fit the pattern. So we never get 100% guarantee, but it's always interesting. So make of that what you will.
I think you've gone, Alex. You've dropped off there, mate.
No, that's that was the last thing I said. Hello, you there?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I can hear you now.
So I'd said make of that what you will, because there wasn't any more to say. I was kind of handing it back over and saying, right, so we can't just look at the data. We can't just say, right, well, that correlates to that, therefore it's true. Because manipulation can happen. Because if you've got, say, hundreds of different people creating these curves, developing the equation based on the data points, if they've got enough clout, they can then produce or manufacture something to fit the pattern. And that can be a decoy. This is the Russian doll effect again. As soon as people become conscious of anything going on within a system and others don't have that knowledge, they're capable of manipulating the system. So we've always got to hold these things under advisement while still being able to find them interesting. So again, what you have to do, you always have to keep an eye on information and park it. If you're going to be consistent, the two extremes are paranoia and gullibility. So the people who attack conspiracy theorists, right, call them paranoids. And the people who are conspiracy theorists who are called paranoid, call those who are not that way gullible, who believe in Santa Claus and believe anything. The truth is going to be somewhere in the middle, and there's no way you can just say, again, simple narratives, simple mathematical equations, simple optics are misleading. Human beings have to develop the capacity to shelve complexity, park it, notice it, but not act on it, not react, not go, oh, look, that's just confirmed your theory, it's true. No, it appears that it might have confirmed your theory, but it doesn't make it true. That's a trap. So you've just got to be capable in a complex world of holding tension. And of course, that's what this whole complexity and narrative stuff's about. We don't want people holding tension. We want people to have blind faith and optimism in a simple narrative, and then they all lived happily ever after. Trust the narrative, trust the science. So yeah, trust the science, trust the COVID science, trust the climate science, trust that the Q story is correct, right? So it doesn't matter if any of them are correct. Just the claim to trust narrative is a problem. So it doesn't matter. You know, if Taylor was correct or is correct or whatever, if he only sells it as trust the program, even if he's right about the program, you can't just trust it. You can't just trust any program because it's a program. It's got an intended end to achieve, to convince people that all shall be well, or all will be this, or all will be that. As soon as you believe what anybody else has told you as a human being, this is why you're always saying, Paul, about the Bible. Even if a bloke, a preacher, a sincere person you consider to be a man of God, teaches something, you can't just accept it. You can trust the source as being better than another source, but you must always cross-reference it and correlate it to your own fair perspective, your own reading of the Bible. It's always the same. There's no way getting around that. Otherwise, you are a sheep, even if you think you're a sophisticated one.
That's it. It's contemplating everything as if you've never been taught anything. And the people who sometimes claim that they know better than you because they've studied it longer or they've read it more or whatever, if they can't answer your questions with source material, then we have a problem. If what is being taught I cannot find in the scriptures, and you have to say, well, it's this or it's this mystery, and you've got to look beyond it, when the Bible just says what it says. Let's just go with what it says, because it goes against every religion, so I wouldn't bother with any other religions anymore. There's not a religion about that would actually satisfy the questions. I got handed a leaflet walking through town yesterday. I thought, oh, that's interesting. It was I think it was 3 Asian lads who were handing these leaflets out. I thought, oh, I wonder if they're going to try and convert me into Islam with this. But no, it was Calvary, the place of peace and pardon, that they gave me. And I look at the back of the church, look for the address on the church, and it's the church where I went where they believe in pre-trib rapture. So I know that, but it doesn't seem like it's the same pastor. So I don't know. I don't know what's happened with that. But the last time I went to it, they were millennial reignists. So when Jesus comes back, he'll reign for 1,000 years, which the Bible says it'll be forever. But they wouldn't be here for the tribulation because they'll be taken away. And then they'll come back with Jesus and reign for 1,000 years, which is absolutely not biblical. So if I'm going to have a rule of thumb in this, it's got to be the scripture, because it's the oldest stuff that we've got. It's been right. The reason I brought those 2 videos up is because we're talking Revelation, where there's going to be 10 kings who don't have a nation, and we're talking about a board here. So is correlation? We don't know yet. It's like you said, but we've got to keep that information within sight, because if you are not watching, he's going to come like a thief. If you're not watching, so I think. Go on.
Just let me add this, because I think this is going to be it could be seen to be a controversial point, but I'm going to bring out some logic here, which is actually irrefutable, but it'll sound a bit interesting at first. And it's this: is it more important to trust the Bible or critique the Bible?
It's both. You've got to test the scriptures with the with scripture. If you just take something out of the Bible without critiquing it and drawing comparison from the scriptures, because the Old and New Testament correlate with each other. If you just take something out of it and trust it, you could make anything up from the Bible.
So you can't actually trust the Bible without critiquing the Bible. And the point about it is, if the Bible's trustworthy and you critique it, it will be proven after the critique to still hold ground and hold water. If you don't critique it, then the trust is based only on claim. We have to test all claims.
That's the issue, isn't it? Because when instead of testing the claims, people just believe that fella or that woman up in that pulpit. They've been here longer than me. They've done it more. They've researched it. That pastor's read the Bible 35 years. I've been reading it 10 minutes. So I just believe. What do I need to do? Just tell me what I need to do. Come here every Sunday. You're tithing, and let's just sing happiness and worship God. If that's all you think you need, then I think you could be lacking. Because
the good news, Paul,
when you read the scriptures, there's conditions. If you do this, if you do that. So Jesus does love everybody, but there's a condition on it. It's not unconditional, and you only find that out if you actually read your Bible, because you are going into churches and they say you can do what you want. I mean, there's teachings now, Alex, that you can't lose your salvation, so you can go back and not even be a believer, and you're still saved because God loves everyone. Such dangerous teachings.
You know the good news here, even the Bible critiques the Bible.
Of course.
And the most prominent example of Bible critiquing the Bible is, well, it really in two senses, but one of the most prominent is the book of Ecclesiastes, which critiques the proverbial wisdom directly. So within the canon of scripture, you've got the book of Proverbs, which assumes a Deuteronomistic prosperity theology, and the book of Ecclesiastes, the next book after Proverbs, critiquing the proverbial Deuteronomistic perspective. The book of Job critiques the Deuteronomistic prosperity theology by placing a central character, Job, and saying, hey, why do these laws not work? Why do they not work? This man is being punished, therefore he can't be righteous. It's a false equation. Again, it's a simplistic reductionist narrative. Job's suffering, therefore Job has sinned. False. But we wouldn't have known if we didn't know at the beginning, the little reveal that in this court, there's this satanic adversary figure. Nobody knew. Job didn't know. Elihu didn't know. All Job's comforters didn't know. There was information that they didn't have. It was behind the screen. We find out later on there's a grand reveal. That's sometimes how it happens. So even the Bible critiques the Bible, and that's good news. Because if the Bible critiques the Bible, it tells us we must critique the Bible. In the trust and faith that when we critique the Bible, it's going to prove solid after we've critiqued it, rather than before we've critiqued it. I mean, this is fundamental. And it's consistent with all other claims that claims must not be accepted at face value. How the hell do you do that? Well, Job was tested in experience. And then he had to learn. He said, I have heard of you before, oh Lord. I've heard of God, but now I've seen you with my own eyes. After he got tested, you've got to go to a deeper level of recognition. You can't just read the ink on the surface of the page and regurgitate it. You've got to live it. It's got to get into every fibre of your being. It's got to soak in through your pores. You've got to live it, eat it, breathe it. It's got to change. It's got to change you. You've got to become a walking Bible in the way you conduct yourself. If you don't, it's just a dead book.
You're right. That's what I mean. If you aren't reading this, you are following a narrative. And if it's coming from a religion, then you've got to look to the hierarchy. And if their hierarchy's got it wrong, everybody's got it wrong. And if you're relying on man to do that, and I do it with not only Q, but I do it with all the other solutions that we've had over the last 15 years in that truther movement. Where, we're here now, we've got it. This is going to change everything. And we've heard it all. It's the actions. It's not what you're saying. It's the actions. And I think at the end of the day, I think we've got to take all this information and we've got to say what is plausible, what is as near to fact as we can get, and see what fleshes out from that. We've got so much distraction. We've got so much going on, from the very minuscule to the macro. It's immense what's going on at the moment. But there is correlation in taking a nod in the head to Revelation and this board of peace. How the state of Israel are looking to Trump and calling him, comparing him to Cyrus the Great, and calling him the Mashiach. There's something about this, whether it's, as you said, are they just playing along with it to look like they're fulfilling it, or is it going to be good enough to fool those people who don't read the Bible and don't have an understanding of it?
This is it.
That's our biblical perspective on that. Have you got any take on the board of peace, Taylor?
Well, let me just say this. I'm afraid I've only got the boring answer for you, and that's that I don't really deal in prophecies. I'm going to be honest. That's not something that interests me. It's not something that I care to think or talk about. It's just.
Taylor, would you not say that a prophecy sounds like a spiritual, supernatural thing, but actually a prophecy is just a prediction? And if someone says that Q is going to have a happy ever after, that's a prophecy.
Well, a prophecy can be a spiritual thing. It can also be a physical thing. It really depends on what kind of prophecy you're talking about.
But I mean, it doesn't have to be a supernatural faith.
No, it doesn't.
Do you know what I mean? So many people would argue that what you're saying about Q being the solution is a prophecy about an ending that will come to pass, which has been predicted, and the military are in charge, and it's going to pan out like this, and they all lived happily ever after. The paedophiles are going to get exposed, the lefties are going to get destroyed, the people will wake up because of it. That has the character of a prophecy.
Well, I guess in a way you could look at it like that. Really, yeah. It really depends. Also, I just want to address something real quick that I know that some people in the chat have been asking about. It's that and that's that I've never told anyone to blindly trust Q or anything or to not do critical thinking, and that's because I always tell people to do their research. You know, I come on here every week. I always tell people to do their research and everything. You know, don't blindly trust what I have to say. Go do the research yourself. I provide sources. I provide books. I provide content creators, etc. And you know, one thing I don't like doing is repeating myself and doing pointless things. I don't like to speak into the void and it not mattering in a sense. So I just wanted to throw that out there. To answer your question directly though, as far as the what's it called? As far as the prophecy angle is that I don't like to. I mean, you could look at it like a prophecy, but I don't personally like to look at it like that. Just because at the end of the day, even though it doesn't have to necessarily, like you said, it's not necessarily always a spiritual, supernatural phenomenon. But most people like to look at it that way. You know, it's that cognitive dissonance basically. So I don't really like to describe it as a prophecy. So the thing is like all you have to do is just look at everything that's happened, look at the facts, look at the evidence, look at what's the word I'm looking for? Look at everything that's happened, and you know, just come to the conclusion yourself. Because once you go into this field, you really can't see any other ending. Especially when it becomes so obvious with all the comms that they give out, and that the government and the military give out. It actually becomes quite amusing at times, to be honest.
But I'm going to say that to you about scripture. You when you read scripture, you can't see another ending. When you read the scriptures, you can't see another ending. There is going to be these things that are happening because the Bible's prophecies have been fulfilled throughout. And if you look at I'm not very good at maths, but you're looking to the power of unbelievable numbers that Jesus could have fulfilled just maybe half a dozen of the prophecies that he fulfilled, and what the prophets said would happen. We are now looking at the fruition, the consummation of this. And we can see what you're talking about, this Q plan is running alongside and at least covering bases and pointing as if it is doing that. And you're saying, well, I don't like to look at that. I'm stuck with this because I know this evidence is true. Well, I'm saying, well, this evidence is true. So you're showing me your evidence, but I'm showing you my evidence, but you don't want to look at mine. And then you'll say, well, you don't want to look at mine. That's where we get stuck with these Russian dolls. When we back up from it, all of this is linked. You even said, because Q was only in America at one point, then it became worldwide. So that's why it needs these answering, because as you rightly pointed out, we've got the Muslims are attacking this, Muslims are doing that, Muslims, and it's Jews, Muslims, Jews. We're seeing something perpetuating. There's got to be a peace brokered somewhere, somehow. I think it was Megasaurus that was saying in the chat room about Kushner and all these being involved. He wanted, I missed the questions, what he wanted to ask you, Taylor. But, we've got to be able to sit and work all this stuff out with, again, putting the Q information in front of us and keeping hold of it, because, yes, that is being fulfilled. So that is a prophecy. is that a self-fulfilling prophecy? And they're using that as the foundation to fulfill prophecy in the Bible, because there are people who read only the Old Testament or only the New Testament, and you can separate these people quite easily. So if you're only Old Testament, you're looking for an earthly Messiah. If you're in Islam, you're looking for an earthly Messiah because Jesus is going to come back and rule on the earth. But it's not that kingdom, but they're still looking for the same Messiah. And whatever this board of peace is, whatever he's being recognised as Cyrus, you can't split those prophecies now, because if he's being recognised as Cyrus, you said yourself, Taylor, these people don't announce things for nothing. Nothing that is happening is being done for nothing. There's nothing happening that is being done independently. So that means that the shooting in Australia, the shooting in Amsterdam, because there's been an attack on Jews in Amsterdam as well. So we've got shootings everywhere. This is all linked, according to what you're saying with the Q plan. We're saying it's all linked because all these factions have got bloodline links that all still want this. So we're all looking towards the same fulcrum, but it's who's going to fall for this. You know, I certainly won't ever put my faith in man. So when you say trust the Q plan, there's no chance I'll trust the plan of man, because whatever comes, it's got to fulfill the prophecy of the Bible for me, because that's the only truth that I've found. But it wasn't so much the prophecy on the Bible I was asking your opinion on, Taylor. What is the functionality of a board of peace where Trump is wanting the king on it, King Charles on it, Tony Blair wanted to be on it. We know he's an horrible bastard, Tony Blair. So he may. Yeah, of course he is. He wanted to be on this board of peace, but it's looking like he won't get on there because people have pointed at him being a war criminal, and it might not look very good on a board of peace. But you know, Obama dropped more bombs than any president and all presidents put together, and he got a peace prize. So we do live in an upside down world. But so I was trying to find out what you thought of the part of the board of peace played in Q.
Well, hold on. First of all, when was this board of peace announced?
It's going to be announced tomorrow. I'm sure. I'd have to. I can pull you a clip up.
I mean, it's all
Do you
right.
not know anything about this board of peace then?
Well, I mean, it's the first time hearing of it, but you know, I'm sometimes I miss information. I'm not perfect at the end of the day, but I'll just say this: that what's it called? Well, it's good that Tony Blair. I don't even think he's still even alive at this point. I'm sure that's just. I'm sure that he's been replaced at this point. But regardless, when it comes to Tony Blair, King Charles, all these other people, you know, it's a good thing to keep. You know, all I can really say is that, you know, the narrative is still out there that these people are good people and yada yada yada. So, you know, the thing is that these people aren't going to be like their platitudes are not going to be dismantled really until the Epstein stuff comes out, if you ask me, because that's pretty much the domino that needs to fall, because you know it's all linked to it. I mean you know about Charles's links with what was his name? What was English pedophile's name? And the guy from England.
Jimmy Savile.
Jimmy Savile, yeah. We don't know about his links. We know, and then you know that ties back to Epstein, which ties back to Mossad. So at the end of the day, it's like, you know, all this stuff needs to come out first. And speaking of which, that actually brings me to something I wanted to mention. That by the time we come back here next week, we'll have to see what happens with the so-called release of these files. I'm sure you know about that, right? The court dates about it being released. Is it on the 18th of this month? Something like that?
Yeah, but like I said, well, everybody's looking at the Epstein files, but not even you knew about the Board of Peace. That's interesting. That's interesting because we've got distractions going on everywhere. So everybody's interested in the Epstein files, but we're missing the point of what is happening with this Board of Peace. Now, Tony Blair is not going to be on this Board of Peace because of what I've said, but this Board of Peace is still there. What is it for? But this is what shouldn't we know what this is for?
Right.
If we don't know about it, but it's lining up with things, then it should at least raise a red flag for me as far as I'm concerned.
Right. Well, let me just say something about the Board of Peace because it's a bit difficult. It's the same like with when people are like liberal humanitarians and they apply the parable of the Good Samaritan and they say, yeah, we shouldn't have borders because everyone's just a citizen of the world. I'll give another example. Board of Peace. It's hard to disagree with peace. So it's really double-edged because anyone who goes, oh, we don't want peace, they're immediate. People are going to go, what do you mean you don't want peace? War. And no one can appear to be credible saying, yeah, I want war. It's really good war. Now, there was a guy, obviously everyone's heard of Friedrich Nietzsche, or I'm presuming everybody has, and the whole way that some of his ideas got appropriated by Hitler, and one of the key themes was the will to power. And everyone noted that the will to power, well, that sounds a bit ominous. The will to power. I want to get power. Who are the people who are so obsessed with getting power? Well, they're obviously dodgy. So then a guy later on called Michel Foucault, he critiqued a lot of this stuff. And he said, yeah, well, actually, there's something called the will to truth. Truth is a bit like peace. Who could disagree with truth? Well, everyone wants the truth. But Foucault argued that the will to truth is a species of the will to power. It's just hidden. It's gone incognito. It's tried to justify itself by saying the same thing. Well, if we have the truth, then we've got all the answers. That's why we trust the science. So if the science is true, we trust the science because we trust the truth because the truth is true and therefore we can believe in it. All seems very simple. But if he's right that the will to truth is a species of the will to power, well, who's the person digging for the truth? Who's the person establishing the truth? Is there a smoke screen in there? And it's the same with Board of Peace. Because people struggle to disagree with the principle of peace, just like they struggle to disagree with the principle of truth, it almost seems churlish to challenge it. Well, who would want peace? Who wouldn't want truth? Surely that's the quest that we all agree on that, don't we? We all want peace. We all want truth. Can't argue with it. So it kills critical perspectives because it induces people to trust. No reasonable person could disagree with it unless you look for who's pulling the strings. Yeah, and if the will to power or the will to truth is a species of the will to power, then the question is, who's establishing what truth is? Who's establishing what peace is? Peace on whose terms? The Romans had something called the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. The Vikings invented parliament after doing a lot of conquering, because when you've conquered and you've established your territory, you want peace. Until that point, you want war to take the territory off others. When you've got the territory, suddenly you don't want rebellions and uprisings. So who's asking the question? Who's peace? Who's truth? And they're all species of the will to power. So who might be trying to get power by selling us peace and selling us truth?
Exactly, yeah. If I'll just, I can post this link for you, Taylor, so you can have a look at it, and I'll just fly through these points. This is there is a full text of the president's plan, of Trump's plan, provided by the White House. Once a ceasefire takes effect, US, Qatari, Egyptian and Turkish mediators will attempt to get both sides to agree what Trump is called a strong, durable, everlasting peace. So, number one, Gaza will be de-radicalized, be a de-radicalized terror-free zone that doesn't pose a threat to its neighbours. Number two, It'll be redeveloped for the benefit of the people of Gaza who have suffered more than enough. Number 3, if both sides agree to the proposal, the war will end immediately. Israeli forces will withdraw. During this time, all military operations, including aerial and artillery bombardment, will be suspended. Number 4, within 72 hours, Israel publicly accepting this agreement, all hostages, alive and deceased, will be returned. Number 5, once all hostages released, Israel will release 250 life sentence prisoners, 1,700 Gazans who've been detained since the 7th of October 2023. Once all hostages are returned, Hamas members who commit to peaceful coexistence and to decommission all their weapons. Now that's got the Qataris have said that they won't allow Hamas to be decommissioned and have no weapons. So there again, we've got another contradiction. So if this happens, the way everybody's contradicting each other, Alex, it's going to take a miracle to get everybody on board with this. And it's basically going through all these points. It gets a bit longer and it's a bit long-winded, but you go all the way up into 20 points, and number 20 is the United States will establish a dialogue between Israel and the Palestinians to agree on a political horizon for peaceful and prosperous coexistence. So if this is all part of the Q, what is the outcome of this? That's what I'm saying. I know you keep saying, Telly, you don't do predictions, and I totally get that. But do we not know? We've just got to stick with what they're doing and trust them because we don't know the outcome. Is that where we're at with this?
More or less, pretty much. Because I mean, when someone what's it called? We know what the end game is. We know what the end game of all this Israel Gaza stuff is. Because at the end of the day, because this whole Gaza thing was a complete wag the dog theater, just like what's going on in Ukraine. All it really just comes down to the fact of what is the purpose of all these psyops, and we know what the answer is, and that's the full exposure of Israel, the full exposure of the Zionists. Not every Jew, can't believe I'm gonna have to say that, but the Zionist regime, the Netanyahu Likud crowd, and to get them out of office. We've already had plenty of pushback against Netanyahu, or his stand-in for this for what's going on and allegedly going on in Gaza. And now we have all this stuff going on with them with these so-called shootings, so-called terrorist attacks connected to Jews. Everything, these last 2 years, everything has all been about killing the image of Israel, and making people realize that it's not the number one democracy in the Middle East or whatever, blah, 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 blah. That's always been the objective when it comes to that area of the world for the last 2 years. That's what this Gaza thing's been all about. That's what this whole so-called pandering to Netanyahu has all been about. All while Trump gets to keep his hands clean and not be accused by evangelicals of being anti-Israel and etc. So it's a nice little game that's being played, and while we do while the wait for it is, let me just say, rather annoying, I'll admit, at the end of the day, the results speak for themselves, and at the end of the day, once you have enough proof that everything is working everything's working a particular way, you have reason to trust it. But that doesn't mean blind trust, obviously. It also means doing your own research and coming to your own conclusion, which I don't like to sit here and automatically assume that something is a certain way. But I can't lie. Whenever I look at a specific event and I look at it for even 5 seconds, I'm just like, okay, yeah, this is obviously a psyop. I know where this is going. Because when you get pattern recognition, you keep seeing these things over and over and over again. You can clearly see where it's going. Just like what happened with these shootings, like in Australia or in Rhode Island, etc.
Yeah, well, that's the point, Taylor. The pattern. If the pattern is generated, if the pattern is a consequence of events that might appear to be random, then we can use the pattern to suggest that there's something beneath the apparent randomness. But if the pattern ever becomes orchestrated or directed, somebody has co-opted the pattern. They've spotted the pattern and they've begun to direct the pattern, which creates the basis for ideological distortion. You can't rule that out. So to stop, we know many movements have got co-opted that have tried to be resistance movements. It happens over and over again. It's part of the playbook. So it's not viable to suggest that patterns are self-reinforcing and self-verifying and self-validating just because they're patterns. Unless you're talking mathematics, fractals. Fractals repeat themselves with a consistent geometrical expression. But for any pattern that isn't purely mathematical, if it's got a social or cultural historical component, it's capable of being co-opted. I mean, you see, if you look at the logical conclusion of what you're saying it's impossible for Q to be co-opted. But by your own logic, Q co-opted the previous movement and started to overturn it. All limited, finite human movements can be co-opted.
Did you finish speaking then, Alex? Because you just crackled at the end.
Yeah, I stopped.
I have to check sometimes. Well, it's just when it's like in the chat room now. It's saying that, and I don't believe Taylor does say it all the time, that at the end of the day, or I'll just say this: do your own research. It's not about that. It's I've looked at the Q stuff and I've seen what they were saying they were going to do, and that it's a martial law plan, and I got that gist of it. But then to say that has sprung now, it's worldwide, so that's affecting me and my country, where, as I can see, well, Farage is certainly on board with Trump over here, so are there other people on board with Trump? Are we seeing that plan? If so, what is that plan doing for me? Is it because it's certainly bringing the Muslim versus Jews over here, Muslim versus Jews versus Christians versus everything else. So we're all arguing with each other. So there is an agenda that seemingly works all over the place, but it's what that culmination is for me. I see a lot of this looking like it's all happening separately when it's completely not. But is it a case of it's just a movie that's playing out? Of course that could be true. How could we not think that we're just being fed these lines, these psyops? It doesn't mean that people haven't been killed. It doesn't mean that they don't really blow things up. It doesn't mean that it's CGI. It doesn't mean those things. It means it's an attack on the mental health system of the general public. And the brain can't differentiate between trauma that is mental or trauma that is physical. It's the same part of the brain that controls it. So if you can put people into a fight or flight and then create that cognitive dissonance, you've still got to hopefully find people that can get in between those gaps and critically think. It was mentioned earlier, Alex, that somebody said in the chat room they like how you encourage this critical thinking because it's just not there. We can't just accept that narrative and what that is being said as that's the truth, because all the other programs, all the other plans that have gone on throughout have all, Margaret Thatcher had a plan. Well, her plan was New Labour. Tony Blair had a plan, and that was to get to war with Iraq and destroy the British economy, which, we see all these plans that people have trusted in. People trusted in Thatcher. People would have Thatcher back tomorrow, mate, with some of the stuff that she said, because it goes completely against what is happening.
Yeah.
They said Thatcher wouldn't do that. Was Maggie Thatcher really that independent iron lady that we all thought, because when it was her turn to go, there was no stopping it. You've gone.
Yeah.
Sling it, love.
Do you know?
There's your
Yeah. And on a simple level, Paul, let's just say I didn't like what you just said, right?
yeah.
And then I said, well, do you know, Taylor, I think Paul's been replaced. And there's someone wearing a Paul mask. Now, how would I confirm or disconfirm that? I mean, I could just say it. The more I say that, and I'm not being facetious here. I'm trying to raise a point that could really help Taylor in the long term. If you hear some disconfirming evidence and you go, that's a bit of an anomaly that my system doesn't predict. So I've got to sideline that. And so, well, it's all a show, right? This anomaly is a bit of a problem. Right, so Paul just said something there. It's problematic. I think Paul, it's all a show. Paul's been replaced. I'm pretty sure Paul's been replaced. It's someone wearing a Paul mask. How do we confirm and disconfirm that without DNA evidence? We're watching something on a screen. How are we going to get to this person? How do we even know where your studio is? How do we even know where you live? How do we not know that you're making a claim that you live somewhere? You live on a different planet or a different country, a different continent or whatever, or in a spaceship. You know, so how are we even going to get to you to confirm or disconfirm? So what I'm saying is if we have anything that can't be disconfirmed, it's a narrative, and it's a watertight narrative. And as soon as you've got that and you make those claims, people are going to critique your claims. They're going to go on what basis? If we can't answer that question, we just go, well, actually, I like to think of it in terms of it's all optics. Yeah, okay. But how are you going to establish that claim? How are you going to test the claim? Then these principles from the philosophy of science. I mean, it was Karl Popper who talked about you can't even verify a fact. People thought, right, that the flatness of the Earth until what happened, as we know, and then the spherical shape of the Earth and the dimensions of the universe, you know, that they could be verified. But you can't verify anything because once some countervailing facts appear, all you've got is what we thought was the case until some new facts come to light. You can't verify anything. You can falsify it if you can find one case. Popper talked about the black swan effect. If you believe all swans are white because you've only ever seen white swans, it doesn't exclude the possibility of a black swan. But until you find a black swan, you don't know. So you'll say, well, every swan I've ever experienced has been white, but it doesn't mean that there won't be black swans in the future. Now, we happen to know that there are black swans, right? But then there could be a green swan. But until we find a green swan, or you know, whatever, when we find a green swan, then we can go, there are green swans. Until that point, we can't say because we haven't found a green swan, there are no green swans. So these are cast iron, thought out philosophical principles advocated by Karl Popper that stood the test of time. It's called critical rationalism. And if you don't go down that path, you're in trouble because ultimately you'll get found out.
We're coming up to the last 15 minutes. Taylor, did you have anything else to put through before we wrap up? I'd like to ask you what should be watching for next, but you're just going to say, well, we'll just have to wait and see, aren't you?
Yeah, I don't do predictions. That's what I've said. I used to do them. I used to do them in the past. I learned that's not a good idea to do that, and you know, it's kind of like, you know, it's kind of similar to prophecy. You don't know exactly what's going to happen in the future, but you can make a good guess. But at the same time, so yeah, that's pretty much like I'm not going to give any kind of like prediction as to what's going to happen. That being said, I will. You know, I want to make this. I believe Jason was taken out of the movie by Q to make way for. That's fucked up, man. So let me just go ahead and share this right here. Where in the world did I put that? Oh, duh, right there. Okay. So, real quick, I want to talk about a bit of a historical topic. Because unfortunately is a prevailing myth that has still lasted until the present day. This is a World War II. This is a World War II topic. That is, and it is about the rape, the so-called rape of Nanking. I'm sure you all know about that, right?
Yes.
Okay. So here's some pictures from China. Posters for the films Dead to Rights, Left, and Don Gigi Rescue. I don't know. Second left at a cinema in Shanghai. Memorial honors the sacred and mostly fictitious memory of the 300,000 dead Chinese civilians of Nanking, 1937. China rekindles wartime fever, stirring fears of anti-Japan hate. A series of World War II dramas about China's fight against Japan is drawing audience to their feet and, in some cases, to tears. Okay, I'm trying to make this one quick, just because this is not that long. So, embedded political slash geopolitical mythologies, no matter how moronic and mendacious, can take a long time to kill, if ever at all. Following the silly spectacle of Moscow's 80th anniversary Victory in Europe Day parade this past April, Beijing hosted a similarly Orwellian victory over Japan propaganda pageant in August, with a military parade overseen by Xi Jinping and attended by President Putin of Russia and Kim Jong-un of North Korea. Leading up to the main event, where Chinese summer movies were portraying China as the innocent victim of the big bad Japs. From the August article, quote, "The star-studded big-budget epics dominating Chinese cinemas this summer are about the country's fight against the Japanese during World War II. In movie theaters, audiences have given rise to the national anthem. Children have been moved to tears, vowing to become soldiers when they grow up. One film, Dead to Rights, about Japan's 1937 invasion of the Chinese city of Nanjing, follows a group of Chinese who smuggle out photographs and help document the killing of tens of thousands of civilians, an event known as the Nanjing Massacre. During an interactive showing in southwestern China, an actor dressed as a soldier shouts at moviegoers, 'The Japanese want to destroy our country and exterminate us. Will you let them?' The audience, shown in a social media video pumping their fist, shouts back, 'We will not,' end quote. Oh dear. Rolling eyes, deep breath, shaking head, sighing. Give me strength. Dear Lord, yes. The artwork, Setting Sun, December 1937 in Nanjing, on display at an exhibition in Beijing. And then the second picture here, young, ignorant Chinese protesters damaging a Japanese department store in China in 2012. And then third picture, Putin and Xi, though they are fighting the very same New World Order cabal which Germany and Japan had in World War II, still remain prisoners to the old communist mythology. Now let's go ahead and talk about this event. December 13th marked the 88th anniversary of the fictitious rape of Nanking by Japanese forces in 1937, a tale spun by the Chinese and American spin masters of the day and further embellished ever since. The Jews have their 6 million at Bolshewitz and other camps, and the Chinese have their 300,000 at Nanking. This year, I noticed my Twitter feed really blowing up with ignorant propaganda posts on Chinese accounts, or perhaps bots. Probably bots. With all due respect to the Honorable Chairman Xi and the industrious people of the new fascist China who have built such a dynamic nation, there are many essential facts missing from the commonly accepted Chinese version of World War II. The truth is spelled out clearly, concisely, and with receipts in my book from last summer, Japan's War of Self-Defense, with the most foundational points of Mike King's patented nutshell technique debunked summarized here. And let's go over these. 1930s to 1940s. Japan's presence in Manchuria, established by Teddy Roosevelt in 1904 and 05, was serving as a bulwark against aggressive communist expansion into Asia. Chinese nationalist leader Chiang Kai-shek was engaged in a civil war against the communists led by Stalin's agent Mao Zedong. Chiang wants good relations with anti-communist Japan, and many of the Chinese government are pro-Japan. 1936, mutinous ultranationalist generals, in collaboration with communist leaders, lure Chiang Kai-shek to a meeting and kidnap him. Japan openly expresses its concern that a plot to reverse Chiang's Japan-friendly policy is afoot. Chiang is released from captivity after having agreed to stop fighting Chinese communists and go to war with Japan over control of Manchuria instead. Chiang accepted this deal, made under duress, with the condition that Red fighters be placed under his command. July 1937, the Chinese engineered a pretext for war with the Marco Polo Bridge incident. The United States, President Roosevelt, assisted China in what FDR viewed as a proxy war against the peaceful Japanese empire. Late 1937, the Chinese army launched a scorched earth policy of burning houses around Nanking to deprive oncoming Japanese soldiers of shelter. December 1937, the legendary rape of Nanking Inn, with its quote-unquote 300,000 dead, was fabricated atrocity propaganda designed to tarnish the image of peaceful Japan and incite the Chinese people to hatred before the Japanese could win the hearts and minds of their Chinese brothers, as they were determined to do. Japan, in the hopes of stopping a war which it was winning, tried on multiple occasions to have FDR intercede with his Chinese quote-unquote ally and make peace. August 1941, Japan blamed the international aggression and propaganda being aimed at her by the US, the UK, and China on a Jewish plot, which, working through the Roosevelt administration, prodded and armed China to keep the war going until the US could enter. Roosevelt and his inner circle deliberately provoked Japan into justifiably attacking the Pacific Naval Base at Pearl Harbor in December of 1941. After the war ended in 1945, the loyal, quote-unquote, communist forces armed by Stalin again turned on Chiang, ultimately toppling his government in 1949 and forcing him to escape to the island of Formosa, now known as Taiwan. A genocide then occurred on the mainland. Sorry, China, but that's the truth about the war in Asia in a nutshell. And that's pretty much it. So, and here's some excerpts from the book, just from the New York Times, showing the article that Chiang was taken prisoner by mutinous generals demanding war on Japan. And here's some images. So the reason why I bring this up is because, as we know, those who don't know history are condemned to repeat it. And the history from this specific article is, number one, is that unfortunately this lie is still just like the so-called Holocaust in Europe. This lie is still being perpetuated to this day as propaganda against the Japanese Empire from the Chinese. And this also shows something interesting, that leaders themselves don't have as much power over culture as you'd think. Because when you have a propagated event like this, which has lasted for decades, almost a century now, it's very difficult in order to kill it. It's just like with Stalin's reputation in Russia. We know that he was a mass murdering psychopath. Putin knows that he was a mass murdering psychopath. But unfortunately, that story of Stalin being the great hero of World War II is still being perpetuated in Russia to this day. So it's really difficult to kill these things. And what this story shows us is that and I'm sure that you guys know this, but just for in case someone in the audience doesn't know, and just for anyone else who's watching, that just because we have fake news today, don't think we didn't have fake news back in the days of World War II and even earlier. We've always had fake news, and fake news becomes fake history. As I like to say, fake news is the fake history that's passed into the fake history is the fake news that is passed into the rear view mirror, because that's what it really is. And at the end of the day, this is something, these events like this and many others like 9/11, etc., all have to be corrected if we're really going to be able to get people to understand the truth about how the world really works.
So what source am I to look at then? Because you said the rape of Nanking is false. It's just a false narrative.
Yes.
So where does that source come from?
Well, if you want to understand this whole story, and this is about the whole entire Asian Pacific side of things when it comes to World War II, read this book right here, which I've also done a read-through on, an audiobook on, is Japan's War of Self-Defense by Mike S. King. I have it on my Rumble channel. I've done a read-through of it. I think it's in 2 parts, maybe 3. This tells pretty much because we're also focused on the European side of things, which makes sense. I mean, we are descended from Europeans, or I mean, you guys are in Europe, but you know what I mean. But the Pacific side of things is also very important to understand as well. And I think this book is pretty much basically the definitive account on that. Always with receipts, of course. You never want to automatically trust something. Always got to bring receipts. And well, all I can really say to people is go and check it out, because I didn't know much about the so-called rape of Nanking before that, but once I saw that, I'm like, oh wow, this is a joke. This story is a joke, just as much of a joke as the Holocaust story. It's the same thing with the Korean, with that whole Korean. What was that? What's that event called? The one with the Korean woman that had sex with Japanese soldiers or whatever. Whatever it's called, same thing. So, shameless plug. Go check that out on my Rumble, or go ahead and go and get the PDF of the book, or even the physical book itself. You can and along with so many other ones that I can recommend to you, whether it be about Q or World War II or 9/11 or COVID or whatever. I got pretty much stuff for you on everything. So everyone,
that's why I asked you the source, because we're looking at the same source again. I'm not saying that Mike is good or is bad, but I'm saying it's the same source again. I wanted sources because I will go and have a look at this. I've not heard of the rape of Nanking up until earlier this week. Oh, last week now. So it was only interesting it come up on my news feed. But I understood what they were trying to do. It's one of the worst things that you can do to your enemy is to, either have them all forced into abortions, or, you take them over from the inside type thing. The Romans used to do it as well. So you're right. There's nothing new there. So do you want to? I've included both your channels in the description box below this anyway. So do you want to say anything in wrapping up, Taylor?
Yes. Well, first of all, if you're interested in talking to me directly, you can email me at my email, chimpyskippy@gmail.com. That's ChimpySkippy@gmail.com. I will pretty much always answer. Just don't send me spam though. But yeah, and also.
Oops. Sorry, Taylor. I've kicked you. I only shut his screen down. What he'd been sharing, I've kicked him. Sorry, Taylor, mate. It wasn't done purposely. Alex, do you want to see us up to the finish line, mate?
I don't specifically. I think it's been a bit different this week in that Taylor just gave us a little bit at the end, really, quite short. Often he'll access that particular site. Obviously, as Mega has said in the chat, Mike King's website, which obviously you can see. Mega's a little bit disparaging there, saying this is this one source. But prior to that, we've had more of a dialogue-based conversation. Quite often we do things in sections, and those sections haven't been as apparent tonight. And I think in some ways that's a good thing. I think in life, all kinds of traditions exist, not just religious traditions. As soon as any entity or thing or production comes into existence, it's got like an inertia. It's got a trajectory or a direction. And in order to keep life interesting, you really need to keep it fresh. Now, I know there's nothing new under the sun, as we find out in the book of Ecclesiastes, but we can still shake the snow globe up from time to time. Get a fresh perspective just by shaking things up, not keep falling into the same grooves. And the fact that we've had a little bit more interactive stuff, a little bit more challenge. The chat's been good again. I think the chat's been raising a couple of more pointed positions against Taylor's. He's received some flack in the past, but I think there's been a bit more consistent and sustained flack this time. And that's not a bad thing. That's something that Taylor's going to have to step up, I think, and go to the next level with that, because otherwise these criticisms are not going to go away. And I think it's not a bad thing, because I think we need to have more ebb and flow generally in conversation. One of the things I notice, we've all got deep research. And so I wouldn't say we monologue, but we often spend, like now, I've been speaking for a couple of minutes. And that affects your concentration span, and it's a little bit less natural than a regular dialogue. I'm not saying people just say like 5 words each and swap it round, because then you wouldn't have enough time to build an argument. But I think sometimes, that more dynamic position of exchange is better. There's more challenge, more debate, more getting into the meat of the ideas. And I think that can only be a healthy thing. But I think it requires all of us. Because what you can do, you can kind of switch off and go, I'm going to say my piece. I'm not too much bothered what anybody else says. Or I might even engage with it in a slightly superficial way, kind of go, yeah. But actually, let me say this, right? I understand that, because people want to say what they want to say. But actually, for us to make progress, real progress on a deeper level, we've got to have careful and active listening, really taking on board people's arguments. You remember there was a time when Jordan Peterson, when he had those debates with Sam Harris. So Peterson is obviously a trained clinical psychologist, public intellectual, well-versed in thought and literature, primarily psychologist. Sam Harris did an undergraduate degree in philosophy, and then he specialised more in neuroscience. But you can call both of them, roughly speaking, non-professional philosophers, popular public intellectuals. And the host, I think it was Brett Weinstein on one occasion, and his brother on another occasion. They would invite each other to steel man, rather than with the opposite of a straw man argument, that they would have to try and represent what the argument of the other person was, and to see if they could do it faithfully, because most people are in the echo chamber of their own head, their own ideas, and actually it's sometimes good to step out of that by force and say, well, actually, steel man that person's ideas. Try and describe to us what you think they mean. That's a lot harder to do because of people's attention spans. Everyone likes to talk about what they're interested in, and they're less interested in talking about what they're less interested in. Just makes sense. But I think there is an obligation upon us to, look at being truly participative and turning around the debates a little bit faster. And, that means we have to be a bit more on our toes. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think sometimes the chat begs that question of us. And I think tonight was a little bit different. And maybe we can continue that a bit more and shake it up a bit more in the future.
Yeah. Like I said, we need to be looking at all this information. We can't just keep saying this source is right and then that's it. It's impossible when it's man that's saying that they're going to do things. Again, I look to where I found truth. I found truth in Scripture. It goes against every religion. All religions say that the Bible's wrong. They don't teach what's in the Bible. So we've got a problem there. We've then got all the things that are going through prophecy that is running alongside the Bible, but is it being manipulated? It doesn't matter. It's still there. It's worth looking at and having that information. If we're only saying that all there is only this world, and we've only got to rely on people, then that's going to play out, and there's not going to be any issues. The Bible's wrong. That means that none of it matters. We can just do what we want because there's no fundamental truth to anything. If we've just all got our own truths, well, somebody's truth is somebody else's lie. One man's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist. We just keep making things up. Yes, you can identify as a cat on Tuesday afternoons. There's no stopping it. And it's the same with when we went off into science. Science is asking questions. If there's questions, then it's science. If there's no more questions, then we've either completely said we can't do this, or we put it to one side and said we can't do that yet. But there's no point in keep spending all that time and money on theories of something when we need to actually get back to true science, which is testing things, seeing what the test results are, repeating it, does it do it again, repeating it, does it do it again. This is how we find out as best as we can what a fact is based on evidence. But how many times in history have we had evidence that has produced facts, and then those facts have then had to be changed because of new information coming in? And that's why we can't sit sterile on man-made information. People will point to the Bible and say that's written by men. All I can say is go and read it. Go and read it, and it'll be like no other book you've ever read. But go to it like a child, like you would just go and read an ordinary book. Let that childlike imagery just flow. And as soon as you let go and say, and especially if you go, I want to know you, it's just different. Every person who that Bible's touched, who I know personally, has had some kind of an experience that has just told them that this is the truth. There is truth here. You're not going to find it anywhere else. So anyway, I think I agree with you. I think it has been a different type of show. I did notice in the chat that Mega said that he's going to give it a wide berth for a while because he thinks it's an intervention show for Taylor. It's an intervention show for everybody, because if you're in the chat room saying you know everything, and I'm not saying Mega's saying that, I'm not saying anybody in the chat room saying that, but if you're in the chat room and thinking you know everything because you think you can put Taylor's information down, then that is still part of the problem. That pride will keep you from knowing the truth unless you do have that open mind and open heart to get that new information. And I think that's what we've got to leave it on, is there's information out there. All the information must be looked at, and then you must discern it for good or for bad. It's you know, at the end of the day, though, those that board of peace, those 10 people, those 10 kings without nations, all of a sudden, we could have something to, worth me talking about soon. Thanks for everybody in the chat. Thanks for anybody who's been with us live through to the end. And if you've got through to this point later on in the week when you've watched it, thanks for your support. Thanks for all the great messages and all the new listeners that I've had messages from. It's encouraging that me and Alex are at least bringing things, new information and light to other people's lives. But the most important thing is we're bringing that there's only one way out of this, and that is through Jesus Christ. Now, God bless, guys. See you next week.
Good night. Good night.